Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another session on your paper, Malayalam Literature in English Translation. Today we will read another short story. The short story is titled The Postmodern Story of Jyoti Vishwanath. It's written by Chandramathi. Before we read the story, let me give you an introduction to the author. So as you can see on the screen, this is the author. Her name is Chandramathi. Her real name is Chandrika Balan, but she is popular as Chandramathi in Malayalam literature. So let me give you a very brief introduction to this author. Chandrika Balan is an Indian bilingual writer who has published books in both English and Malayalam under the pen name Chandramathi. Born in 1954, Chandramathi has turned herself into one of the prominent women writers in Malayalam. She taught in the Department of English of All Saints College, Trivandrum, from where she retired in 2009. She has also worked briefly as the executive editor of the Sahitya Academy project on medieval Indian literature from 1993 to 1994. She is an award winning writer of fiction, a translator, and a critic in both English and Malayalam. That is why we call her as a bilingual writer at the very outset, because she works in both Malayalam and English. She has published 4 books in English and 20 books in Malayalam, including 12 collections of short stories, an anthology of medieval Malayalam poetry, 2 collections of essays, 2 memoirs, and 5 books translated from English. So, a number of books to her credit. Let it be translations, let it be critical pieces, let it be works of art. Chandramati came to the spotlight with her short stories written during the 1990s. Her works are marked by a pleasant wit and a fine quality of observation, especially when she deals with man woman relationships. So, this is a peculiar feature that you note with Chandramati's works. The way she explores man woman relationships, or how deeply and profoundly she uh, uh, ponders on or meditates upon this particular relationship. Her stories are primarily women centered, and she falls in line among a brilliant array of predecessors like Lalitambika Antarjanam, Saraswati Amma, Rajalakshmi, and Kamala Das, and enjoys a place of eminence among her contemporaries like Sarah Joseph, Gracie, Ashita, and Priya S. So this points out that she is counted among the popular writers, some of the greatest writers in Malayalam literature. Let me also point out some of her important works. Aaryavarthanam, which came out in 1995, Devi Gramam, 1997, Reindeer, which came out in 1998, and for which she received the Kerala Sahitya Academy Award. Swayam Swandam, that came out in 1999, Devam Sorgathil, and Annayude Attaഴവിരുന്ന്, which came out in 2006. So these are some of her major works. She has also bagged some of the prestigious awards that are known to us, like Topil Devi Award. She won it in 1995. VP Shivakumar Award in 1996. Kada Award in 1997. The prestigious Odakural Award, she won it in 1998. And finally, the Kerala Sahitya Academy Award in 1990. And so she is a credible writer. She is someone who has given us some valuable pieces of work. Her works have also been translated into English, other Indian languages, and even Swedish language. So that is an introduction to the author. Let me also point out a few important points regarding the story that we are about to discuss. Chandramathi is adept at experimenting with form. That is so much obvious with respect to the short story that we are about to learn. She experiments with the form, the narrative form. Several of her stories reflect her interests in the developments in literary form, especially of those that are designated as the postmodern. So this is what she plays with. This is what she experiments with. She experiments with the postmodern techniques. The postmodern story of Jyoti Vishwanath is one such fiction written in a metafictional style. Let me tell you what metafiction is. Metafiction means fiction in which the author self consciously alludes to the artificiality or literariness of a work by parodying or departing from novelistic conventions and traditional narrative techniques. To put it in plain statements, a metafictional novel is one such novel which proclaims its fictional status. Now, most probably, like the one that we are about to discuss today, the author might interact with you. No, normally we don't, come across such things while reading a novel. We read the narrative, we understand the events, and we, converge at a particular conclusion of our own. But in this particular story, or while reading metafictional works, you find this, frequent uh, pointing out the author or someone pointing out the fictional status of the work. That is basically what a metafictional work is. This story that we are about to learn today was originally published in 1994 in the Mathrubhumi Weekly, and it was later included in Chandramathi's 1995 collection, which I pointed out earlier, Aaryavarthanam. The story begins with the author's address to the readers. This is not quite typical of a novel. Normally, you know how narratives begin. But here, in this particular, or as part of this particular short story, you have an interaction between the author and the supposed reader at the very outset. So it begins with the author's address to the readers regarding the limitless freedom they can take while reading the story, and closes with an appeal to the readers to rewrite the ending of the story. So look at the elements or the narrative strategy that Chandramati has opted for giving us this story. So she says that the readers have limitless freedom when it comes to reading her story. A story titled The Postmodern Story of Jyoti Vishwanath. And you can even rewrite the ending of the story if you don't agree with the way it ended. That is something which only postmodern novels has have offered us to fiddle with the narrative. So Chandramati gives us that permission, gives us that freedom to rewrite the ending of the story if we don't accept the ending of the story. So you might be curious now, what is actually the ending of the story? Why does she say that you can rewrite it? Now, if you want to, if you don't agree with the way I have formed the narrative. So in that regard, it could be said that the story puts forward a postmodern notion about life and accepts life in a practical viewpoint. In what regard? In the way the story ends. So that is an introduction to the short story that we are about to discuss. Now let's move into the short story. May the author state something at the outset itself. So normally you don't confront this while you read a story. You begin with the story. You get yourself introduced to the characters. That is what normally happens. But here, the story begins with a statement by the author herself. May the author state something at the outset itself. Now, this is something that is representative of postmodernism and postmodern novels. The author interacting with the readers. Now, this in a way, proclaims the fictional status of work, something that you can connect it with self-reflexivity. Now, Ohan Pamuk is a writer that that you must remember in this regard when you discuss self-reflexivity and metafictional novels. His novel, My Name Is Red, is one such popular novel. It's a huge book, but still, you have all the elements of postmodernism incorporated into that particular novel, especially the metafictional style of narration. This story is purely fictitious. So the author confesses that this story is purely fictitious. Fictitious means something which is conceived by imagination. It has no connections whatsoever with people who are merely alive or with people who have escaped unto death. This is a statement that she makes at the very outset. So it has no connections whatsoever with people who are merely alive. What do you mean by merely alive? People who live for the sake of living. No. Just being alive, not doing anything else. So this has no connections whatsoever with such people, and also with people who have escaped unto death. Unto is archaic form of to. So who have escaped to death, who have escaped this world, who have died. Any semblance, any semblance to life, if discovered, has to be dismissed at once as a figment of fancy. So if you find any semblance means appearance or resemblance. If you find any resemblance, it has to be dismissed at once as a figment of fancy. So you can dismiss it as a figment of fancy. Figment here means an idea contrived by imagination, something which is brought out of your imagination. So if you are able to make out some sort of a connection between the characters or the events with people who merely live or who have passed away, then that understand that it is only an act of imagination. The story is purely fictitious. So she has made her statement at the very outset. The reader is given full freedom to read the story without any prior sanction from the author at one sitting or piecemeal. So you can either read it bit by bit. That is what the word piecemeal means. You can read it at one single sitting, or you can read it piecemeal, bit by bit. So you have all the freedom. The reader can stop reading now itself and decide not to read it at all. So this is what we confront at the very outset of the story. The author interacting with us, the author interacting with the readers, trying to point out how you can approach this particular short story. There are no resemblance with anyone who's living or died away. She passed away. She made her statement, and now she says that you have all the freedom in the world to read this novel at a single sitting or by piecemeal. So you can stop the reading if you want to. If by any chance you continue to read, please feel free to break the reading wherever you like. Such exorbitant freedom is usually given only by Milan Kundera, Borges, or Italo Calvino. So these are some of the writers who have given such freedom. Milan Kundera is a person who who's popular as far as postmodern writings are concerned. He is a Czech novelist, and you also have Borges being pointed out here. Borges is an Argentinian poet, and also Italo Calvino, one who has written works like If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler, a representative work of postmodern novels. So such exorbitant freedom, she says that Chandramathi says that such exorbitant freedom. Exorbitant means something which crosses the boundary of reason. Something you cannot justify using your reason or your rationale. So such freedom have been given by writers like Kundera, Borges, or Italo Calvino, or some of our writers who imitate them. You can even edit this story or rewrite any of its paragraphs. So this is why I said that the author gives us all the freedom in the world. So you can read it now, or you can just stop reading it now. You can edit it. So lot of freedom that is being given by the author to the readers. So this is quite typical of the postmodern novels. As for the postmodern tag in the title, the adjective has been added as a signpost. Signpost means a post with a sign, something which tells us something. As a signpost to future critics who otherwise would attach it only to writers of their choice. So, what Chandramathi means here is that if I don't add this particular title, if I don't add this particular adjective to the title, adjective is the postmodern adjective. So it would be a signpost to future critics who otherwise would attach it only to writers of their choice. Writers of their choice means the author. You know, uh, what she's trying is she's trying to explain the title to us. If I don't keep the adjective postmodern in it, then perhaps the critics will interpret in some other way. Then they will try to take this work away from the possible meanings that I have perhaps included or incorporated into the work. The name of the heroine or the female hero has been chosen after a lot of careful thought. So we have the author explaining to us why she gave a particular name to the protagonist or the female hero. She is an educated, efficient, and well experienced modern woman, and so outdated rustic names have been discarded. So she is educated, efficient, and well experienced. So she has not been given any outdated names, any rustic names. Our lady passed her MBBS quite honorably without paying any capitation fee, went abroad for higher studies, and like any good looking Malayali girl who goes abroad for her studies, returned with a husband. So, a pinch of humor over there. Her father, Mr. Ramanand Menon, had cautioned her while seeing her off to the United States. Daughter, you may love anyone, but marry only an Indian. And so the obedient daughter fell in love with a Chinese, a Japanese, and a Yankee. Yankee means an American, it's an informal term to address an American. And a Yankee, but took care to marry an Indian. So she was very obedient. She fell in love with a Chinese, a Japanese, and an American man, but she married an Indian guy. In fact, she deserves more than full marks for filial obedience. Filial obedience means obedience that is shown by children towards their parents. So she must receive full marks in that particular regard. That is what Chandramathi says. Which she proved by marrying an Indian from her own part of India, that is Kerala. So she not only chose an Indian, but she chose an Indian who is a Keralite. At present, she is the MD of a five-star hospital in Kerala, designed and built by her husband, who, of course, is an engineer, an architect to be precise. For such a resourceful woman, less sophisticated names like Bhagavati or Dakshayani will simply not do. So the author is justifying her choice of name, her choice of name for the character. So the reason why she hasn't given her names like Dashani and Bhagavati is that this female hero or heroine, she is educated, efficient, she has done her MBBS. At present, she is the MD of a five-star hospital in Kerala. So she cannot be given a name like rustic names like Dakshani or Bhagavati. So in this paragraph, what you find is that the author she justifies her choice of title or name for her male or female heroine. Now let's look at the male hero's name. A pinch of symbolism has been added to the choice of the hero's name. Vishwanath means Lord of the Universe. So you have both the names here. You have the female heroine's name, which is Jyoti, and the male hero's name is Vishwanath. A pinch of symbolism has been added to the choice of the hero's name. Vishwanath means Lord of the Universe. The signified is God, of course, but for the purposes of this story, we shall take only a fragment of the universe, a little planet, our Earth. From the beginning of time itself, the rulers of this earth had been men. Aya, Adam, Allah, the majority of any ministry, the head of the family, so on and so forth. But the earth has never belonged to any of them. So she again goes on to explain why she has chosen a particular name for the male character. Now, Aya is probably a reference to Lord Shiva. That is how I interpret it. So let it be Aya, let it be Adam, let it be Allah. Now, the majority of any ministry, the head of the family, so on and so forth. But the earth has never belonged to any of them. Do you suspect a feminist flavor in the story? You probably think Jyoti is the earth that refuses to be ruled by the Lord. Well, the story has only begun, and at this point, even the author cannot see where it is headed. But readers who sympathize with the feminist cause will be glad to know that Vishwanath is a feminist. The photograph of him standing next to Simone de Beauvoir under a leafless trunk in frozen Paris enjoys the same pride of place in Vishwanath's drawing room as his wedding photograph. So we still have the interaction between the author and the reader going on here as well. It's like the author is almost encroaching into the thought process of the reader. So the author says that you might think that this story is basically a feminist story. Now, but the good news for feminists is that even though the story it does not have any trace of feminism, the male hero in this particular story is a feminist. Vishwanath is a feminist, and he has a photograph of him standing along with Simone de Beauvoir. I hope you know who Simone de Beauvoir is. She is a French writer. So there is a photograph of him standing next to Simone de Beauvoir under a leafless trunk in frozen Paris, and this particular photograph enjoys the same, status. It enjoys the same pride as that of his wedding photograph. He claims that Betty Friedan had gifted him an autographed copy of the second stage, and further that Megan Terry had been inspired by him to write one of her famous plays. So these are some of the feminist accounts that you get as part of the character named Vishwanath. Vishwanath claims that Betty Friedan is an American writer, a leading figure in the American women's movement, and whose book The Feminine Mystique, which came out in 1963, is often credited as to spark the second wave of American feminism. So she is an important figure as far as feminism is concerned. So Vishwanath claims that Betty Friedan had gifted him an autographed copy of The Second Stage. The Second Stage is a work by Betty Friedan. And further, that Megan Terry is an American playwright. Megan Terry had been inspired by him to write one of her famous plays. So Vishwanath takes it to the extent of saying that Megan Terry, who is an American playwright, she wrote one of her plays because she was inspired by Vishwanath. That story runs like this. And this is the story of how Vishwanath inspired Megan Terry to write one of her plays. Let's read that story. That story runs like this. On her way home from off Broadway, Megan Terry had stopped to buy some canned food at a department store. As she got back into the car, Vishwanath took out a can from the shopping bag and read aloud, "Keep tightly closed in a cool, dry place." Then turned to Megan Terry and said, "This is how we Indians keep our women." So this is the account of that incident that happened or that actually inspired Megan Terry to write one of her plays. So Vishwanath takes out one of the can and it was written on the can, "Keep tightly closed in a cool, dry place." And this is the comment that Vishwanath makes. That is how we Indians keep our women. Oh, Megan Terry laughed and then went home and wrote a play with the same title. So Vishwanath says that is how she wrote the play, "Keep tightly closed in a cool, dry place." Because Vishwanath pointed out that it is how, or this is how exactly we keep our women at home back in India. So that points out some of the feminist aspects that Vishwanath has in his life. Unlike most other feminists, Vishwanath preached what he practiced. So this is a difference that the author is trying to point out. Unlike most other feminists, so he was different. Vishwanath was different. What did he do? What made him different? He preached what he practiced. So he practiced what he said. That is what made him different. He did not grumble or pull a long face if his doctor wife came home late. So he did not grumble. Grumble means make complaints or pull a long face. Pull a long face means to look sad. So he did not become angry, or he did not become sad at the fact that his wife used to return very late from the hospital. Instead, he received her with a smile. So this is how Vishwanath welcomed her back home when she used to, return home very late. He used to welcome her with a smile. Whenever Jyoti went out of town for medical seminars, it was Vishwanath who packed her suitcase for her. He even called up the airport to find out the ETA of her flight back home and waited at the airport in his car. He had time for all these as his office, the Nest architect cum designers, let us help you build your world, was never crowded. So this is why he always had time for his wife. His office, which is called the Nest architect cum designers, let us help you build your world, it was never crowded. So this is where we get more details pertaining to the hero and the heroine. We understand that Vishwanath is an architect and he works at a firm called the Nest, and that he was very welcoming as far as his wife is concerned, who was very busy with her job. And he used to welcome with her with a smile. He did not become angry at her, unlike many other feminists or unlike many other men in the Indian context. On nights when Jyoti was late or dining out, Vishwanath would eat his dinner, warmed in the microwave oven by Shanda, the maid. Alone, recline on the hammock in the balcony and watch out for Jyoti's Condasa. So this is what Vishwanath used to do when she was very late. He used to eat the dinner. There was a maid at his house, and her name was Shanta. And he used to recline on the hammock. Hammock means a hanging bed which is made out of ropes. So he used to recline on the hammock in the balcony, and he used to eat his food and wait for Jyoti to return. This was enough to make the neighbors, especially women, terribly jealous. So his neighbors, especially women neighbors, they were terribly jealous at Jyoti, because she had a wonderful husband who used to welcome her with a smile even when she arrived home late, who used to take care of all his things. So all the women neighbors, they were very jealous at Jyoti. This was enough to make the neighbors, especially women, terribly jealous. The very women who claimed to be feminists but were careful to reach home in time to give their husbands their insulin tablets. So, why does the author say this? Now, she wants to point out that the neighbors, the women neighbors who were feminists, they did not preach, they did not practice what they preached. And Vishwanath was different. He's different in the sense that he used to practice what he used to preach. Now the author wishes to reveal a truth that is expected to shock the readers. So again, we have yet another interruption being made there by the author. And she wants to convey a truth that is expected to shock the readers. Jyoti is not a feminist. So this is the truth that the author has conveyed just now. Jyoti is not a feminist. In fact, on 14 May 1986 at Illinois, Jyoti had told her friend Adrian Clinton, "I hate all feminists." By the way, Adrian Clinton is not related to President Clinton. Adrian's mom had been a member of the bra burning brigade of American feminists. Jyoti had really perplexed her with the story of the Kerala women who fought for the right to cover their breasts. So the author is trying to point out that in spite of all these facts that we just heard now, Jyoti is not a feminist. And in fact, she hated all the feminists. Jyoti's feminist neighbors in India, Indira Gandhi Nagar, looked down upon her for her unsympathetic attitude towards their struggle for women's rights and equality. So, since Jyoti hated all feminists, she did not take part in any of the activities arranged, organized by the women who were basically feminists, especially in the apartment that they lived. They spread the rumor that Vishwanath was a henpecked husband. Henpecked husband means a husband who is dominated by his wife. So they spread the rumor that Vishwanath was an henpecked husband who would even wash Jyoti's undergarments in the washing machine, of course. So this is the rumor that the ladies, the women in the neighborhood, spent and spread. They did this because Jyoti did not take part in any of the activities which were organized by them. The president of the Butterfly Women's Association of Indira Gandhi Nagar is said to have remarked to its secretary, what is the need of becoming a feminist if one gets such a husband? That is quite an absurd statement that is being made there by this president of this association called Butterfly Women's Association. And the statement is that what is the need of becoming a feminist if one gets such a husband? So why do you want to be a feminist? If you have a good husband, you don't have to be a feminist. So a true absurd statement with respect to all the philosophies and all the statements that we have heard before regarding feminism. Of course, Jyoti never came to know any of these stories, for these women feigned such sincere affection and regard whenever they saw her. So Jyoti never came to understand the hidden agenda or the kind of perceptions that they had regarding Jyoti and her husband, because they used to, the women in her neighborhood used to shower all sort of affection and regard for them when they met face to face. In any case, Jyoti would have had no time to respond to them, even if she had heard any of their comments made behind her back. Her all too rare holidays were spent in the kitchen making ghee rice for Vishwanath. So she rarely had holidays, and when she had holidays, she used to spend time cooking for Vishwanath, especially ghee rice. He liked it best when it was garnished with browned onions, nuts, and raisins, and served with salad, papadam, and pickle. That was the kind of cuisine that he liked. After a hearty lunch, they would enjoy their siesta. Siesta means a nap that you take in the afternoon. So after the lunch, they used to enjoy their siesta, then go out for a movie or concert, dine out, and return. So this is what they used to do when they had a holiday, or to be specific, when Jyoti had a holiday. And since those days were once in a blue moon anyway, how could Jyoti find time to respond to gossip? So this is how busy Jyoti was, and therefore she did not have time to respond to the gossips and rumors that were being spread by the women in the neighborhood. The author knows the question that now forms itself in the reader's minds. So again, we have the author interpreting our reading process. Interrupting the reading process. Doesn't this couple have any child? So normally this is what any Keralite would think. This is what normally anyone living in our culture would think. Now, why is it that this couple or the author is not talking about any of their children? Don't they have children? Well, a great deal of thought has gone into it. So the author, while she was doing the process of, or was in the process of characterization, she thought about it. No, do they need kids? Shall I introduce one or two kids for Jyoti and Vishwanath? And let's see what the author did. To tell you the truth, story writing makes every author a god, for he or she has a right to play with the lives of the characters, even kill them for sport. So look at the status that the creator or the author is assuming here. She says that when the author writes something, when the author creates a narrative, he or she takes the place of a god, of a creator. You can fiddle with their lives. You can even kill them for the sake of killing them. So you have all the freedom, just like God. For instance, these pens can give, not give, give and take away any number of children to Jyoti and Vishwanath. So she points out that the pen that I have in my hand right now, with which I am making up this narrative, I am writing this narrative. I can give a child, not give a child, give and take away a child. So I have limitless possibilities with respect to this pen and the narrative that I am writing. Only then can these children grow up and put their parents in the boarding institutions for the aged. So this is how the narrative would turn if I incorporate characters who are children into this particular narrative. Then probably they will send their parents to old age homes. But on second thoughts, it was decided not to give them any child. If you have no time to look after your children, and if there is no guarantee that your children will look after you in your old age, why should you bother to have children at all? So this is probably a question that the author raises to our culture, to us, to all the readers. This is not just a question which pertains to Jyoti and Vishwanath. This is a question to all of us. This is a practical kind of question. Probably, let me add the adjective postmodern. This is a postmodern question that she gives us. Why should you have kids if you don't have time to look after them? Why should you have kids if you have no surety that they will look after you when you are old? This is a kind of postmodern question that she raises to all us readers. So let Jyoti and Vishwanath take resort in the oft heard cliche. We cannot think of anyone coming between ourselves, even if it is our own child. So, this is the kind of response that they gave to everyone who inquired about their children. We don't want anyone to come between us. That is how much we love each other. We don't want to destroy our togetherness. So, that is why we don't have any children. And thus their days flowed on and on till one day a team of foreign doctors landed at the airport in response to Jyoti's invitation. So now things are going to take a turn. A few doctors, foreign doctors, they have come to India on the request of Jyoti. They had come to collaborate with Jyoti in her experiments to extract an antidote for AIDS from our neem or margosa. So this was the team's, or this was the purpose behind the visit. They were going to collaborate with Jyoti to extract an antidote. Antidote means a remedy. A remedy for what? A remedy for AIDS. And where are they going to extract it from? From neem or margosa, something which you call as vapor in Malayalam. Jyoti's days and nights were given over to working at the laboratory. So earlier, Jyoti and Vishwanath they used to get some time to spend with each other, but as of now, they don't have it anymore because Jyoti is too busy with the team with the extraction of antidote from margosa or neem. Vishwanath too had been caught up in Jyoti's enthusiasm at first, but the feeling wore off in due course. Jyoti was completely preoccupied with all her experiments, dinner parties, and Kathakali shows arranged to relax the nerves of the overworking doctors, etc. Left to himself, Vishwanath withdrew into the solitary world of his poetry. So this is what has happened to Vishwanath as of now. Jyoti became too involved with the research that was happening in the laboratory, the hospital, that Vishwanath, he withdrew himself to the solitary world of his poetry. It should have been mentioned earlier that Vishwanath had been a poet of note during his student days. So he was a popular poet when he was a student. He was a great poet. His poems were obscure only to deconstructionists, and his Lament of the Water Lily had won the first prize at the State School Youth Festival. So that is how important his works were, the works that he used to write during his school days. It even won him State School Youth Festival, a prize at State School Youth Festival. It is said that when the young Vishwanath had recited this poem beginning O Sudha, Vasudha, Darling Earth, in his booming baritone, it's a low deep voice, Miss R. Sudha Devi, the Malayalam lecturer, had been so overcome as to forget the sanctity of the teacher-student relationship. So this particular teacher, she was so much, overwhelmed by the poem that Vishwanath wrote that it is said that she forgot all the sanctity of the teacher student relationship. It is also said that nothing untoward happened because of Vishwanath's restraint. So we don't know what actually happened, but we are given a clue that no, the teacher forgot all the sanctity of the teacher-student relationship, and nothing bad happened because Vishwanath tried to restrict her. All this may only be a rumor. Anyway, the printer's ink never had the good fortune to touch Vishwanath's poems after his college days. So, with the end of his college life, After his studies, the printer's ink did not have the good fortune to touch Vishwanath's poems, which means that he did not get his poems printed once he was done with his college life. In fact, even Jyoti does not know that her husband writes poetry. That's quite strange. Yeah. Even Jyoti does not know that her husband writes poetry. Perhaps that is how busy she is, or perhaps he never exposed it to Jyoti. The author feels the urge of the readers to have a taste of Vishwanath's muse, and so here is a poem written by him. So the author says that I have spoken too much about his poetry. I have spoken so much about his poetry, so I think you would like to have a taste of his muse. Muse means his poems, his poetry. So we have a few lines written by him. O world, clad in beautiful white, in you melt the heart and head as one. How far away from the Lord of the world are you? Oh, my seductive dream! Do you know that the Lord of the world now is destitute with no world of his own? So perhaps this points out his own status, especially in the last two lines. The world of the Lord now is destitute. Destitute means poor and impoverished. So the Lord who created the world is now a destitute. He is poor, he is impoverished, and he does not even have a world for his own. So probably this particular poem is also indicative of the present status of Vishwanath. Please don't presume that his poems are all spontaneous overflow of personal feelings like this. Scathing social criticism too can be perceived in some of them. For instance, see page 42 of his diary of poems. And this is what we read in page 42. Clouds. Clouds in the horizon. The fiery downpour of Union Carbide. When you hear this particular name, you know what the author or the poet Vishwanath is talking about, the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984. The fiery downpour of Union Carbide has left them empty, vaporless, and they stand and wait for the birth of the death within their burns Chernobyl. For the birth of the death within their burns Chernobyl. They smile as the cheese is stained with toxic smoke. So he makes reference to two tragedies in this particular poem. One is the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984 and also the Chernobyl nuclear tragedy of 1986. So it's not just personal feelings that he has communicated through his poems. He has also spoken or he has also given us scathing criticism of some of the tragedies. It is indeed unfortunate that the critics never got a chance to see or assess them. So he was indeed a good poet, but the world did not recognize it. Something must have happened on those lonely nights when Vishwanath reclined on the hammock and tried to capture the myriad poems swimming about in the air around him. Que sera sera, and it means what will be Spanish. What it is, the author is not certain. When Jyoti had seen off the last member of the medical research team at the airport, she was exhilarated to say the least. Her research was nearing fruition. So her research was going to be a success. It was going to turn out successful very soon. She was all set to exorcise. Exorcise means to expel. Expel the fiend. Fiend means an evil being, a devil. Exorcise the fiend of AIDS. So she calls AIDS a fiend, a devil, and she was ready to exorcise, to expel this fiend or devil. AIDS with the magical charm of neem. She only had to put it in the form of a thesis and submit it to the WHO with the slides and video cassettes. So that is the only job that remained. Now all the other works were completed. Now she had to form a thesis out of this and she had to incorporate all the slides and video cassettes and send it to WHO. International fame, recognitions, awards, world tours all awaited her. Somewhere in the air, she could even feel a Padma Shri or Padma Vibhushan. So she believed that she might get a Padma Shri or a Padma Vibhushan. Now, all these are the civilian awards that are given to the residents of India by this nation. Padma Shri is the fourth highest civilian, and Padma Vibhushan is the second highest civilian award. So Jyoti believed that she is even, she can even bag some of these prestigious awards. Resting her head on Vishwanath's chest, Jyoti babbled on about her future prospects. Slowly, she fell asleep, unable to feel his coldness, and saw a dream in her sleep. So she fell asleep, and she couldn't, actually acknowledge or recognize the kind of situation, kind of predicament that Vishwanath was in, and she saw a dream in her sleep. Now, don't ask if anybody would dream without sleeping. Several people, including the author, do it every day. Jyoti, in her dream, was flying to Sweden to receive the Nobel Prize. So, this is the dream that she saw. So, she spoke about, she believed that she would get a Vibhushan, a Padma Shri or Padma Vibhushan, but in her dream, she saw that she was going to grab the Nobel Prize. The aeroplane suddenly hit an air pocket. An air pocket is a local region of low pressure or ascending or descending air, that causes a sudden, sort of jerking, or a plane to lose height. So the aeroplane suddenly hits an air pocket, and Jyoti opened her eyes with a start. So it is at that particular point that she wakes up. To her surprise, she saw Vishwanath closing the bedroom door from outside. So as soon as she woke up, this is what she finds. Vishwanath was going out. He was locking the room. He was, closing the door from outside. So where is Vishwanath going? Let's read and understand. After the initial bewilderment means confusion. So she was confused. Why was he going outside at this point of night? After the initial bewilderment, Jyoti got up slowly and, like any intelligent wife, followed him. So look at how she, plays a little humor, a little sarcasm by using the adjective intelligent, by giving the adjective intelligent to the noun wife. So, like any intelligent wife, followed him. So she wants to know what Vishwanath is up to. She saw Vishwanath going down the stairs to the dining hall. He crossed to the kitchen door, which was slightly ajar. Ajar means half closed or half open, like an open invitation. So it was as if the door was kept ajar with purpose. He entered, closed the door behind him, and Jyoti heard the click of the lock from within. So this is what Vishwanath did. He entered into somebody's room and he closed the door. It is interesting to speculate what Jyoti would have done had she been a traditional wife. So, for a moment, let us speculate. Let us think how Jyoti would have reacted to this particular event. Now, we'll understand it whose room it is quite a bit later. But let's try to guess how Jyoti would have reacted if she was a traditional wife. She could have kicked open the closed door of the kitchen. She could have rolled on the floor hysterically. Hysterically means, in a state of madness, crying and cursing loud enough to wake all the neighbors. Depending on the intensity of the emotions, she could even have tried to commit suicide. So that is how grievous the mistake done by Vishwanath is. We do, as of now, we don't know what it is, but she gives us clues. The author, she gives us clues as to what is actually happening. So if Jyoti was a traditional wife, she could have kicked open the door. She could have rolled on the floor hysterically and woke up, and caused to wake up all the neighbors. She could have even committed suicide. Had she decided on suicide, she could have chosen an ugly spectacle of death by hanging from the fan, or a beautiful death with an overdose of sleeping pills, or even a scientific death by slicing the jugular veins. So she had numerous options when it comes to commit suicide. She could have hanged herself, she could have taken an overdose of sleeping pills, or she could have even cut her jugular veins. Jugular veins are the veins in the neck. But Jyoti did not do any of this. So this is what the author tells us. She did not do anything of this sort, which means that she is not a traditional wife. She paused on the stairs and reflected for a while. The laboratory with its lights, projectors, computers, and guinea pigs. The treatise to be written. The innumerable preoccupations in the years to come. In the midst of all this, how could Dr. Jyoti Vishwanath find time to cook sambar and avial, go to the market to buy fish and vegetables, fill the empty cans in the storeroom, wash the soiled clothes, to sort them and put them in the washing machine, that is, manure and water to the plants in the garden, vacuum, clean the house, feed, bathe, and brush two Alsatians and three poodles, and look after the countless lovebirds? No, Shanda has to stay. So this is where we are, exposed to actually what has actually happened, whose room that is, whom does Vishwanath visit at this particular point of the time. He entered into Shanda, the maid's room. So this is what Jyoti thinks. So this is what Jyoti thinks. Now, if I send off Shanta because of this particular event that just happened or happening, I will have to take care of this house. So all these images come to her mind, her laboratory with all the slides, projectors, computers, all the research work that she has been doing all this while. The treatise that needs to be written, the innumerable preoccupations that would come in the years to come, all the household chores, cooking, bathing the dogs, Alsatians and poodles, bathing the dogs. We were pointed out earlier that they don't have children, but they have two Alsatians and three poodles. So she will have to take care of all of these things. And finally, Jyoti decides no, Shanta has to stay, which means that Jyoti is not going to retaliate against this particular event. Shanta has been there for years and is now like one of the family. She knows everyone's likes and dislikes by sheer instinct. Another one in her place would only mean time wasted in fresh training and perhaps the recurrence of the same problem anyway. So they don't have enough time to, or Jyoti doesn't have enough time to bring in another maid and teach her everything that Shanta knew already. Jyoti came down the stairs with the shaky steps, opened the refrigerator, and drank a whole bottle of chilled mineral water. She stood for a minute looking at the closed kitchen door, uneasy feelings stirring deep within. Vishwanath, how could you? The momentary weakness was ruthlessly suppressed by Jyoti, who went up the stairs, this time with firm steps. So Jyoti understood what Vishwanath was up to, but she did not react. But she was, thinking in a practical way because she had numerous jobs to be done. She had her research. She would have to do all the family chores, and she had no time for that. And therefore, she goes back to her room. Readers probably know how difficult it is to get servants nowadays, and so may find Jyoti's decision wise and practical. Those readers who find it difficult to think so are free to rewrite the end of the story in whatever way they like. So this is why the author gives us the freedom to rewrite the story. If you're not happy with the way Jyoti reacted, if you want her to kick open the door, or if you want her to commit suicide by hanging herself, or eating an overdose, or taking an overdose of sleeping pills, or cutting her veins, perhaps you can do that. You have the freedom to do that. So that is where the story ends. No, one couldn't suggest a better postmodern form of ending to this particular story. The readers are given the freedom to rewrite the ending of the story if they don't like it. So perhaps that is the most interesting postmodern element that you find in this story. After reading the story, we understand that this story is postmodern both in terms of approach and in terms of the plot. We have postmodern techniques incorporated into the story and also postmodern description of women. So you find a postmodern approach as well as a postmodern plot. So it's justified. The title that she has chosen for the story is justified. All right. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for being part of this. I hope you have understood the story. I'll see you in the next video lesson. Thank you so much.